Brace yourself.
Platinum, I love you. I may have thrown you under the bus a little at the start of the Mad World video, but I still think you're an amazing studio with fully realized potential. You've made some of my favorite games of the last decade, and all things considered, you just kick so much ass. So color me surprised when Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance comes along and pretty much defies all expectations of what a character action game with the Metal Gear name can be. It's such an antithesis, it's in your face, daring you to watch as Pretty Boy Cyber Ninja Raiden wrecks up enemies at lightning speed. And while it's not my all-time favorite game from Platinum, it's still one that I can easily recommend. But today we're going to be talking about something a bit more specific. Not the Zangetsu system, not the story, not that clean, slick action gameplay. No, this time we're looking into a bit of an oddball thesis for Metal Gear Rising, one that, while rampantly praised, deserves better analysis than what I believe it receives. Its soundtrack.
Time for Jack to let her rip.
Revengeance has a soundtrack that since has grown a following. When discussing the game's strengths, the soundtrack is almost always brought up, those ricocheting guitar solos combined with warped electronic effects. It's a speedball of thrash metal, nu metal, drum and bass, and big beat electronica that's just so hard to ignore. Like its gameplay subverting the expectations of the Metal Gear Solid game design formula, the music in Metal Gear Rising is meant to subvert the dramatic, spy movie soundtrack of Kojima's more hands-on installments. Revengeance is always crackling with energy, even in the quieter cuts, and that's something that Metal Gear Solid's soundtrack, for all its proficiencies, never prioritized. And while I don't have anything against the OSTs of the Metal Gear Solid games, Revengeance's soundtrack always drew me in further. It's quite the statement, one that I want to give a deep dive. So why am I even giving so much attention to something like a game soundtrack, let alone one as loud, blaring, and to some folks obnoxious as that of Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. Metal Gear Rising's music has been given plenty of praise and condemnation, but the extent of its discussion is usually reserved to the common criticism, so bad it's good. And I think that this game's OST deserves far more introspection than that. Like any great video game soundtrack, the way it's implemented into the mechanics and design is just as important as the composition's quality itself. That's kind of what separates game OSTs from other musical artifacts. They support a context beyond their inherent qualities. Metal Gear Rising's musical composition has a pretty interesting history, one that definitely contributes to its soundtrack's defining aesthetic. The music was helmed by Jamie Christopherson, a longtime video game composer who entered the position more than halfway into the game's development. His past projects originated at Capcom, including games like Onimusha: Dawn of Dreams and the 2009 reboot of Bionic Commando. Christopherson was looped into Metal Gear Rising's development almost haphazardly, so he brought in other musicians like Logan Mader, former guitarist for heavy metal band Machine Head, and Christopherson worked closely with Platinum Games musical director Naoto Tanaka. It was a uniquely collaborative effort all around. According to Christopherson in an interview with VentureBeat, it was definitely a unique experience compared to how I usually compose, which is usually very solitary. At the very final stage, when I'm done writing, I'll turn over music to the client. But here, it was collaboration the whole way through. We'd record live guitars, play it for the client, then work from their feedback. With the large amount of collaboration, Christopherson was involved in a new kind of situation, but the end result is what many would consider his best work. Say what you will about the edgy, angsty lyrics or blasting, chaotic electronics, but this is, by far, some of the best musical implementation in a video game that this generation has seen in ages. Metal Gear Rising's mix of electronics and heavy metal brings a venerable video game series into a totally different light. one that abandons the franchise's musical subtlety and gives it a shot of adrenaline instead. It's that rush of jittering electronic drums, warped bass drops, and revving metal riffs. It's melodramatic and off the wall, but it's not without its in-jokes. In fact, some might consider that to be the cherry on top. Metal Gear Rising's soundtrack, for all its edginess, has self-awareness. It knows it's over the top, cranking things up to 11 with a wink and nudge in between every breakdown. That kind of panache is rare these days, especially with various outlets struggling to validate video games as something dramatic and cinematic, something that needs to be taken seriously and molded into an artistic opus. Metal Gear Rising uses its philosophical pondering and political grandstanding in a farcical way, and no better example is its lyrics, which take ideas like warrior code and free will ideology and make them into something that simply can't be taken seriously. The boss fight themes are usually the best examples of this, as lyrics can range from something angry and confrontational, like "I'm my own master now," to something almost poetic like "Red Sun." But the quality of the soundtrack alone really isn't enough for it to be dubbed a fantastic video game OST. What really matters when crafting a video game soundtrack is how the score complements the game's design, and that's where I think Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance manages to really show its best colors. This is a soundtrack composed so conscientiously that I'm still stunned that it is passed off solely for its aesthetic or lyrics. Metal Gear Rising's OST is a custom woven cloth, scripted with attention to detail for each masterful encounter, and that's really the point I want to make with this video. There's a clear method to the madness. To springboard this topic, I want to look specifically at one battle, then dissect it piece by piece. One of the earlier battles manages to really shine in how the music was so conscientiously composed, and why I believe that Metal Gear Rising sets the bar in how to craft a musical theme for a video game scenario. Let's take a look at Raiden's battle with Mistral. Mistral is definitely a memorable character in Revengeance's already unforgettable boss brigade. She's got that seductive stride, but she also has a strange mystery to her. The way her red hair covers half of her face, the suit collar surrounding her neck, makes you want to know what's going through her head. But with her clawed boots stepping on a pod to break it in half, she still contains an authoritative tone. She summons her pawns in the gecko pods, using their limbs as her own and even using the arms to form her main weapon. It might sound a bit body horror in tone, but her multi-arm design gives off that same level of elegance. It appears majestic, like a bird spreading its wings. And I think this is absolutely preserved in the boss fight's theme, A Stranger I Remain. It kicks off with a slow, dramatic crescendo moving into the main theme as Mistral attaches the gecko pods, and the heavy guitar riffs continuously build in intensity. As the fight starts, the rhythms start blasting with drum machines and plenty of electronic effects that add a dense and almost claustrophobic action vibe. But as the instrumental enters the chorus, the track plays very clean piano notes, stripping away the cluttered digital effects into something of pure clarity. It's here where the track really gels with the gameplay, as it mirrors Mistral's dangerous beauty, displaying sharp moments of purity amongst the loud, aggressive rhythms. When the fight moves into its final phase, the vocals kick in, and boy do they hit the bullseye. The way the lyrics burst onto the scene with the line, "I finally found what I was looking for," shows this unachievable state finally attained, embracing Mistral's desire for a purpose through combat. At this point, the track feels liberating, even though the player is still in combat, and the way the vocals begin with this surprisingly uplifting tone, all with those clean pianos playing, retains that sense of freedom. But then the track moves back into that heavier mood. The vocals become lower and more aggressive, and the slamming rhythms blend with noisy electronics. There's a shift from clean, beautiful freedom to chaotic, furious aggression that fits so perfectly with the character Mistral is and in how she fights. Her whipping staff spirals and spins as she attacks, while the geckos swarm to serve her bidding. It's full of poise and almost royalty. She constantly emits an elegance, but only through the fury of battle. And the way A Stranger I Remain uses these parallels so effectively makes Mistral's theme a standout moment, not just in the music quality, but creating a track fully centered on a character and their individual elements. It's a total highlight. Basically, each theme has a sense of presence, one that fits so well with the encounters and scenarios that occur while they play. For example, Monsoon's frenetic and unpredictable fighting style, combined with Raiden letting loose his relentless Jack the Ripper personality, make the skittering drums and fast guitar solos sensible additions to the Stains of Time. In contrast, Red Sun feels monolithic and imposing, like the supergiant star it's named after, which fits Sundowner's more defensive boss style, which has limited acrobatic movement and a tricky method to make Raiden's own attacks hurt him.
You can be cooler than that, Jack.
These two tracks each exist in totally different musical tones, but even with their diversity in mind, they share the same futuristic electronics and metal edge that made the entire soundtrack cohesive. Metal Gear Rising is a true experiment in balancing variety with unity, something that only the best soundtracks have been able to attain. Even without repeat listens, the soundtrack is rich with its own hidden complexities, a self-aware proficiency that ends up being so much more than the sum of its parts. And the climactic final boss fight with Senator Armstrong really seals the deal when it comes to writing a final boss theme. Armstrong is already a very goofy approach to a final confrontation, but the main theme, It Has to Be This Way, fits Armstrong and Raiden's clash in a less obvious way. It's symphonic, boasting with almost orchestral backing instrumentation, and an outright soaring guitar solo as the track progresses. It's sweat beating down your neck intense, amping up the tension to match the difficulty of the boss fight itself. But It Has to Be This Way isn't just a music theme, it also tells a story. It plays in a battle where Raiden has Sam's blade in hand as opposed to his own. Raiden embraces a thirst for battle like Sam did, and the music is meant to confidently release that sense of unity and acceptance of conflict. The lyrics are of realization, like, I carve my own path, you follow your wrath, but maybe we're both the same. And in the end, it has to be this way. Note that the lyrics only play when Raiden has Sam's blade in tow. When Armstrong knocks the sword out of Raiden's hand, there's no poetic climax in play. The lyrics stop, and that epicenter is weakened.
That's the best you got. This is the greatest fight of my life.
It's such a subtle touch, but one that speaks volumes about Raiden coming to terms with why he truly fights. Beyond his direct confrontation with Armstrong and his insane ideals, Raiden learns through Sam's final monologue and his blade that battle will always be a part of him. And It Has to Be This Way is a grand announcement that Raiden and Sam will be warriors until their ends, regardless of who they fight or why. And I think that's really brilliant. From both a gameplay perspective and a narrative perspective, the music in Metal Gear Rising is dynamic and mobile. It moves and shifts in tone when appropriate, but never discards its purpose to complement its gameplay and the circumstances that frame every confrontation. The way it all sounds, the way it so confidently and unabashedly embraces musical elements that would be tacky in any other game, it's something special. Yeah, it's loud and corny, but it does so near flawlessly. Metal Gear Rising's soundtrack is such a strange beast. I'm infatuated by the propulsive battle cry of this endeavor. What Kristofferson did, even with the experience he had with the source material and even the genre, shattered all expectations and made a collection of songs that are inseparable from the insane encounters they're drawn toward. But at the same time, the music is grandiose and confident. It screams from the top of its lungs that it's out to deliver shock and awe at every moment, never holding back. And when those lyrics kick in and the final stage of the boss fight begins, it's impossible to look past Metal Gear Rising's soundtrack's finesse. It's custom tuned to its context. It's built to raise hell and deliver an epic sense of presence and purpose. To this day, no other soundtrack has felt this way for me. For all of the other memorable OSTs that I've listened to over the years, ones that have shaped my gaming experiences and history, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is very different from the rest. Not necessarily because of its quality or even its genre, both of which I openly praise anyway, but because it paints a picture. It's a catalyst for the energy that charges its gameplay, the adrenaline needed to give that extra push and blast to victory. It's so unabashedly dumb, angsty, and over the top, but it benefits from all that. Because Metal Gear Rising's soundtrack, edginess and all, is absolutely brilliant.